Kia ora koutou and welcome to the day after the final. It's a full credit episode. I'm Alice Soper and I'm still coming down off that high. And with me is Les Elder. Les, where did you watch that one?
I actually watched that one at home. So I had club rugby all day and then we shot home and I made it just on kickoff. So missed the build-up, which I was a bit gutted about because I like building that atmosphere, you know. But got to watch it at home, just me, my husband and my son, which was good because I could go screaming at the TV.
Yeah, I had to rewatch it again today so that I could hear the commentary that wasn't my own yelling at the pub, because it was all a bit frantic where I was watching it in my sister's 40th. But hey, my brother, who loves winding me up the wrong way, he even admitted that he thought that actually now he doesn't think he could just play women and be better than them. So a huge win for the game, if not Matatu yesterday. So look, that game, what the heck? It was like they listened to our preview and were like, we're going to do the complete opposite of everything we said about this team. Because Matatu, I'd been on them last week about being slow starters. Well, you definitely couldn't say that yesterday, right?
How good were they, right? Like that first 20 minutes, I was like, holy heck, this team, like they've come here, they're here to play, they give 0 Fs. That's what I loved. And Amy Duplessis seemed to be the one that was just throwing all the 0 Fs, you know. She didn't care about anybody. She was just there to win. And I think she was inspirational that whole game. But man, they came out firing and I was just gutted for them. I actually felt for them as the game went on, that they faced the adversity that they did, losing a couple of, you know, really key players early on in the game.
Oh, mate. I mean, that was the thing. I wrote it down, rewatching it today. 87 tackles the Blues had to make in the first 20 minutes alone. Like, that's crazy stuff. And that there was like you say, just coming out full hiss, full noise. And the thing that I ended up taking away was like, we've talked about it before, the way that they can absorb pressure, the Matatu team, but their resilience was on another level yesterday. Losing their halfback, for goodness sake. Kelsey McCook did a fantastic job. Yeah, there was a bit of inexperience here and there, but to be able to come on so early in a final when she wouldn't have been expecting that at all and be able to hold her nerve through all of that, I thought, you know, the performances that we see the Matatu franchise get out of their player group, the way that this group, who might not be, you know, well-known rugby names yet across their whole team sheet, but they just get them to play with such confidence, which I think is a fantastic thing to see.
And I think it's just hand in hand with what we observed and mentioned at the start of the season, you know. I know the Blues had a just us for us type mantra going on in their team, but I actually think Matatu had a very similar thing going on. They didn't talk about it, but they had that going on, that full belief in their squad, in their depth, you know, losing Lucy Jenkins and Emma Dermody, having to change Laura Bayfield to 7, bring in Stacey Niall, who I thought played unreal for her. Was it her first game of the season or second game of the season? And then, you know, Kaya Napier went down really early, and as valiant as she tried to make it work, you could just tell she was not 100% not comfortable. Losing Maya Joseph, then the HIA with Georgia Ponsonby. Yeah, I felt for Matatu, and a part of me actually was going, gosh, I hope they cause an upset because this is a team that is like out on their limbs, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, you have to say, though, the Blues, meanwhile, a team that was so well known for their attack, to ultimately win it on defence, I don't think that was something that we would have expected from this side. That last 10 minutes, like, that was all heart holding on there. You know, I thought particular Afina, you know, she made the mistake, and then what did she do straight away? She got under that ball and she held up that try. You know, that was the type of thing where it was like, I might do something, I'm going to get it back, you know, and that get it back attitude was ultimately what carried them, right?
I thought too that was sort of helped by what seemed like a bit of panic attack from Matatu in those dying minutes. Like, I got the feeling that they started, a couple of players, not everyone, but a couple of players started to withdraw into themselves, because of that fear of potentially turning it over and that losing the game, right? And that's probably where key players like Maya Joseph, Kaya Napier, Georgia Ponsonby would have been critical on the field, especially Georgia Ponsonby.
Yeah, I mean that, and I unfortunately, as a hooker, could see that throw wasn't going to go right for them. Often, you can tell before the ball's even left fingers. I could see the tension in the hands moving that ball before that. You know, they had that prime opportunity on the 5 meters out, and so for that to go off, you do think, yeah, if Georgia had been on, that would have been happy days for them. They'd scored a lot of tries this season off their line out, so you could have seen it happening. But yeah, the Blues. I mean, a lot of big players stepping up. You know, we talked about Amy Duplessis, but Portia Woodman-Whitcliffe, for goodness sake. Again, typifies for me. We talk about her attack all the time, but it was her defence yesterday. Tackles, I would love to know how many dominant tackles that woman made, because she was picking people up and driving them down.
Yeah, 2 tackles there. I think Kaya Napier was on the end of one of them. She picked her up and dumped her, you know, all legal, great technique tackles. But yeah, Portia was amazing. Both centres were. But I guess like Portia, and we're going to talk about that soon in our top 15, right? But Portia, she was pretty clutch in some big moments, especially that last play.
The only other thing I want to say is Blackfern Sevens, piss off. You're not taking Braxton Sorensen McGee. I've seen you do this before. We've had some young gun come in and do amazing stuff, have fantastic football, and then all of a sudden Sevens comes sniffing around, takes them away on a bloody training contract, and we don't see them again till the next Super Rugby Aupiki season.
She's gone. I reckon she's gone.
Oh, hands off her, Les. I want her. I want her in ours.
She said it yesterday. She wants to be a triple international, and she probably will be.
I know, but can't you start with a World Cup? Anyway, shall we look at this? These 15, the final inform 15 for the season, because we are going to be joined by a guest in not too long, so we're going to rip through this. Starting, I guess, with number 1. Pretty tough call between these two loose heads.
Yeah, that's a tough battle, these two here, and I couldn't decide. I thought from hunch, watching the game, it was Pip Love. I was quite impressed with the work that Pip went into. Some big carries, but also some big defensive work as well when they had to switch into D. But you're looking at her, we did compare her and Chris Valiko, right? And so you've got Pip 7 carries to Chris's 4. Chris had 1 defender beaten, but ultimately, I mean, this just shows the defense on both sides, because Pip, of those 7 carries, only made 7 meters, and of those 4 carries, Chris only made 4 meters.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a heck of a lot of running going on there. Chris Valiko did get 1 try. She made 12 tackles. Pip made 10. Both got 100% tackle success. Chris Valiko, which has probably been the story of her year, just gave away too many penalties, though. 4 penalties conceded compared to Pip Love's 2. So, I mean, with that, what do you reckon?
I think, you know what, I'm going to give it to Pip. And my reason being is, you know, when we're talking about the rattle that came through that Matatu squad, it did then require that leadership that came out of Pip to hold that nerve. And ultimately, in that first stanza too, the Blues were in real trouble in terms of their discipline. So Chris contributing 4 to that, I reckon that edges it for Pip. So let's go with her this
Locked
week.
in.
Now, this next one has us thinking, we made a rule last week, but can we change it? Can we change it already? Because when you look at the stats, Georgia Ponsonby was head and shoulders above.
That was a landslide, really, right? And I think to myself, can we change the rules? Yeah, we can. It's our podcast.
Yeah, we're going to do it because, look, I also thought, and I'm going to put the shout out here, Maggie Cogger-Orr, fantastic. She is our country's best referee. And I loved hearing how clear her comms are. And that's why she's the top one for me. And the way that she talked through both of those, tackle cards that went through, you really had a clear understanding, if you hadn't watched the game before, around what it is, the process that the refs go through. So with that one, yeah, Georgia got it wrong, but she got the worst end of it ultimately. And so, stuff it. She's our number 2.
She is. I thought she was outstanding. And we've already said, right, if she had played the full 80, she could have impacted those dying minutes.
Absolutely. Oh, my God, are we going with an all Matatu front row? Because I think we're picking Amy Rule as the tie head here.
Yeah, I think so. Again, they used Onapalu as they do for those first, that first 20 minutes, which we know the Blues will come out physical in that first 20. So Ona absorbed that. Actually, she probably gave it more to the Blues in that first 26-ish minutes. But then they brought on Amy Rule, and I thought her impact when she came on for the remainder of the game was really good. 10 carries, 20 metres gained, 1 defender beaten, 11 tackles, 1 missed. So even her stats in comparison to Dora Itunu were a lot better.
Yeah. So, okay, Matatu front row. Looking at the locks, though. Now, this is an interesting one because actually, like, Maya, again, a great game, like, looking through those. Also a clutch moment. You know, we just talked about Amy Rule getting in there, but so did Maya underneath Amy to get that crucial turnover right at the end there. But then Stacey Neal, like, where even was she? Nowhere. Called up into injury cover. Game of their life. I kept seeing her every 5 minutes. I was like, she's doing something else. And we don't have the stat here, but you had to give her the try assist for the crucial point that the Matatu did get at the end of the game there, because it was her heads up to put Kaipo against a bunch of backs. So for goodness sake, I don't know. Which one do you choose, Liz?
Yeah, I don't know either. I thought Stacey had a great game, and to be able to step into that role, that's a pressure game, right? And she hadn't had a lot of game time there. So I think for that alone, that on top of the performance she gave, you make the decision.
Oh, it's so hard because I'm going to also say, like, yeah, Stacey, incredible, but then Maya as well, when we're talking about the mettle in the last 10 minutes and getting your team together and holding their nerve when they needed to, leading by example when they needed to. It's a line call. Do we just flip a coin? Do I have one on my desk? Honestly, I'm going to. All right, heads, we're going to go Maya. Tails, we're going to go Stacey. Here we go. What have we got? Oh, tails it is, Stacey. Congratulations.
Oh my God, we cannot put it to a coin toss. But I mean, both were great. Clutch moment, Ruse definitely. But I mean, if you look at some of Stacey's stats, like. Who owned the bread and butter of a lock roll.
Okay, what about the other lock then? Because I'm going to be honest too, Chelsea Bremner had a great game for me. She had a couple of carries that were fantastic meter eaters when they needed it, like seeing her move quicker than I've seen her move in some time. But then, of course, Mama Baipulu doing what she always does best, and she was immense, particularly on defence as well in those dying stages. So what way are you calling that one, Liz?
Oh, God, this is another one that was really tough. And I guess it just shows too the dominance that Matatu had in this game. They both 2 lineouts, 1 to Mama, 1 steal. Chelsea won 1 lineout, 1 steal. Pretty much the same in tackles. Mama got 22 tackles, 3 missed. Chelsea got 20 tackles, 100%. Chelsea 10 carries to Mama's 7. 18 metres gained to Mama's 4. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking Chelsea Bremner.
Wow. We are giving so much to Matatu right now. This is crazy. I don't know if I would have necessarily predicted that at the front. Are we going to keep this run going for all Matatu? Because we're looking at number 6 now. We've got Greenway versus obviously Alana Bremner there. Again, pretty tight. We have 4 lineouts that Alana picked up. We have, in terms of tackles, Greenway 17 solid, no missed tackles there for her. She made 6 carries, including a clean break, 49 metres gained. Oh, does she get just slight of the edge, I think, on this one?
I think so. Only just, though. I think only just. Like, I thought Alana played a good game as well, had a big game as well. But considering the Blues weren't on attack that much, they're pretty hand in hand when it comes to defence. Actually, Greenway a lot more, but that's typical of the game and how it unfolded. But the little ball that the Blues did get, Greenway actually made some impact there. So I'd probably say Holly Greenway.
Now, a shout out to Laura Bayfield because, like we said, they had to do a reshuffle, and I thought she actually looked pretty handy in the 7. We'd only seen her run out at lock. But the unfortunate thing for her was she's playing against Taufa Basin, who's playing in the form of her life at the moment. So it's got to be Basin for us, right?
Yeah, 100% Basin. I thought she was outstanding. Her physicality, man, unmatched.
Now, I mentioned before about Maya Ruse kind of giving those key moments at the dying stages. Kaipo Olsen Basin as Baker doing the same. She was at that turnover that she got, give them another chance. Like, she just did everything her team needed to. Crucial turnovers. She got the 10 tackles that she made there, 21 carries, though, for 84 metres gained. Again, we talked about how this game was giving no metres, but Kaipo takes them anyway. So, because of that, she's got to take the number 8 of the week, right?
Yeah, 100%, hands down, was outstanding, Kaipo. And those dying minutes, I was like, just give it to Kaipo. Someone give it to Kaipo. And she got that half break.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Now, look, as I mentioned before, have to give the shout out to the heroics of Kelsey Cook, because she was in the Wairarapa squad last year, and we just said, oh, okay, ka kite, why? Anyway, she did fantastic stuff coming into that match much earlier than she thought, but Tara Turner ultimately, great turn from her. What toe she had? She almost got that runaway as well. Incredible stuff. But then Amy Duplessis. And don't get distracted, Alice. She did everything you needed to, though, distributing well, keeping that tempo when they did get the opportunity to get the go forward. You know, winning a turnover as well. We got to give it to Tara. She did what her team needed.
Absolutely. I'll be interested to see what happens with young Tara Turner in terms of Pack 4 coming up. But locked in for 9 of the week.
What do you reckon about 10, though?
Look, I probably lean towards Hannah King, and maybe it's because we didn't get to see the Blues fire on attack as much as they did when they did, which was limited. Man, they created stuff. But I thought Hannah King did well. 42 passes, 7 tackles, only missed 2, 7 carries. Again, not a lot of metres there in 10 metres, but defenders beaten 2, 1 offload. Nailed all her conversions. They were pretty hand in hand, these two, but I think for majority of the game, she actually ran it.
Yep. And again, if we're talking about resilience, she has been in such tight partnership with Maya Joseph. A lot of their rhythm has been playing off each other. So having a different line and being able to hold a cool head through that, yeah, she's fantastic there. The wing was an interesting one, the left wing, because we obviously had Chael Robbins-Reti, who did a lot of things right. You know, she was really grinding things up, but that kind of brain explosion in the first half on that kickoff, when the Blues had just kind of ripped it off, come back into the game after all the run of play going the other way, it compounded at a moment when we didn't need to, right? Does that end up giving the edge to Colossi?
I think it does, and I think both wingers probably didn't play their best. I definitely didn't think that Colossi had her best game. I mean, she got easily beaten by Winnie Palamo in that opening try. But yeah, there was just some crucial, I think, mistakes there from Chael that she'd be gutted with as well. But yeah, when she did get the ball, she did some good things, but some defensive things. I think 4 tackles, missed 3. You know, that's pretty hard.
Yeah, definitely. All right, number 12. I mean, talking about cool heads, that's what I wrote down on my notes watching Roahei Demont. She's so cool. That's just what I wrote. And I didn't just mean like in the, you know, what an awesome sense. I meant just so chill. Her mindset, the way that she can get into that place of flow, the way that nothing seems to flap her, the way that she can just turn around from one role to the next, is fantastic stuff. It's only going to be fantastic stuff for the Black Ferns, right?
Yeah, she was hand down, I think, number 12 of the day for me. I mean, again, like I said earlier, when they did when they did get the ball, which wasn't a lot, she created something. Yeah, Ruahei, hands down. And I just love listening to her speak. Gosh, her after-match speech. Nothing to do with the rugby, obviously, but she just speaks so genuinely from the heart. You don't get like the typical cliches from Ruahei, which I love.
Oh, she, like, honestly, in terms of game analysis straight after a match too, though, like, I don't generally listen to post-matches that much, to be honest, because people are still so in the moment, and they don't necessarily have any kind of seeds of something that they can plant for you to think on. But often, you see this, yes, with the Blues, but with the Black Ferns too, when she does the afters, she often gives you something really insightful about the game that's just played, which is like, yeah, her rugby mind is something that's just, at another level. At another level was the performance, right? Was the performance of these 213s. I think they could be argued MVP for both of their sides. Like the key moments, the key tackles, the key turnovers, the key turns of pace, like both 13s gave you everything that you wanted.
They were outstanding, both of them. And I remember at the end of the game, I said to my husband, man, Amy has been outstanding, like my player of the day for Matatu, hands down. And then I thought to myself, and then I said to him, the thing that I hope she doesn't hold on to is that last pass, because she did all this amazing stuff, and just that one pass at the end might be the thing that she remembers, you know, and not the amazing things that she did throughout the game. But Yeah, I know that Portia Woodman-Whitcliffe got voted Player of the Day from the Sky commentary team and things like that, and deservedly so as well, but I couldn't really tell the two apart. If I had to make a decision on the two, it probably, unfortunately, would be that clutch moment at the end where Portia closed out the game by getting that intercept.
I mean, I think ultimately that's where you have to land. And when you are, maybe when we're wavering, it has to go to the winners on the day, like that's also could be where we land. But yeah, look, I think it's really important for Amy too, because let's be honest, she's been someone in the past that during a World Cup year has felt the full impact of sevens players coming in. So I think some of this attitude, some of this kaha, some of this, particularly like the way she is really attacking the line this year, she's wanting to show people that she's not willing to give up her shot at a World Cup, at a World Cup start at 13. So
keep it on, Amy.
We
keep
love
it on.
Now, the right wing, this is a bit of a surprise, again, if you were just asking people that maybe hadn't paid as much attention to the game this year. I don't think many people would have picked in a head-to-head between Caitlin Vahakolo and Winnie Palamo that we would have Winnie Palamo coming out on top, right?
No, I don't think so. And I mean, I feel like Caitlin, since her head knock, has probably been a little bit quiet. And I hope that she's all good, with just the recovery around that, because that can take a lot out of you. But on the flip side, we have to credit Winnie Palamo, and we did last week. We didn't give her the form winger of the week, but this week we have. She was outstanding, made a great try. She still had two defenders to beat, and she just in and outed both and made that try, got that try. I thought she was really good. 3 defenders beaten off her 7 carries, 1 clean break, which obviously, and she got the try. 38 metres gained. I thought Winnie Palamo was outstanding for the mud too.
Fantastic for her too. And a great example of someone who has just been coached well, because we are seeing her level up her game, and she's obviously doing the work too, but seeing her level up her game and her confidence has been awesome to watch this Aupiki season. She's been a real pleasure to see week on week. But like I said, before we even got to this 15, hands off sevens. I don't want you taking Braxton from us just yet, because wowee, she's just starting to come into her own. The confidence of this kid, these were the things. I was like, big tackles. She shut down that Kaya try with that bundling over the touchline there. She's offload. I just wrote offload. Wow.
Great analysis.
And such confidence. That's what I just keep coming back to. It's just such confidence that this kid is carrying with. And I say kid in the most respectful way, because I am 36 years old, so I'm almost double this woman's age.
I think I am double her age. Yeah, she was great. I mean, and again, Kyle she wasn't able to play her best because she got that knee injury or ankle injury. But Braxton, big pressure game, young, and just that clutch moment when she got the intercept try. And she had 3 Matatu girls chasing her down. One got her hands, I think Fia Laikong got her hands on Braxton's hips, and she probably should have made that tackle. I thought she actually caught her pretty well. Just needed to keep on her feet. But Braxton just took them all on and dotted down. So, she's our Form 15. She's outstanding.
She's so exciting to watch, and it's just awesome that every year we get to have another whole wave of these fantastic young ones coming through. But look, we are now going to be joined very shortly by our special guest from across the ditch to give us the preview of the Super W team that this Blues team now gets to play on Thursday. The very, probably in a way, as much as we might have wanted the Matatu fairy tale, it's probably good given how many injuries they took through that squad for this match, that we have a Blues team of full hiss, of full noise, more or less, to be the one that will be shaping up to take them on. One thing I can tell you right now, if you were listening from overseas, hooray! For once in my life, I could actually tell you can watch this, because I'm told that outside of New Zealand, Australia, and the Pacific regions, this is going to be streamed on the NZR Plus app. So figure out how to do that. We'll put links somewhere.
We'll
and that means, if you're UK, you can watch this. If you're in North America, you can watch this. And I know the fans have been asking for it, so finally they're going to have a taste of Super Rugby action.
Excellent. How exciting is this? But I think let's not even make our listeners wait any further. Let's just get our amazing guest introduced and on here.
And oh my gosh, team, aren't we so excited to have an accent that isn't a New Zealand one, and to have someone that's joining us? Finally, it's not just Les and me having opinions. We're diversifying. We're reaching out across the ditch. And we're so excited to have Sera Naiqama with us today. How exciting is this? Congratulations, our first guest on Full Credit, sis.
Are you talking to Les or myself?
I'm talking. Yeah, this is how it's going to go. This is listen up, team. It's going to be awkward, but I will just continue to tell you how amazing that Sera is. Because did you know, if you haven't heard her doing commentary and doing things better than me on the mic, clearly, she's also been run around the field. You might remember her from the 2023 Aupiki Champions, Matatu, for goodness sake. She actually had a little appearance down here. She jumped over the ditch and played with us. But she's more obviously well known as Wallaroo's number 186. You won 4 championship with the team that's now going to be coming over here and playing here on Thursday. What can you tell us about the Tars, Sera?
Oh, just hearing you say that, it's like it's death by a thousand cuts hearing you say that. I was with that team last year, but it's not me this year. Look, the Waratahs, they are a class side and they have been at the top of the competition. I left the Tars at the end of last season to try and pursue my rugby ambitions across the country with the Western Force, and it definitely was the right decision for me. It was definitely bittersweet watching the Tars, but now having had the opportunity to play against this team, it is no surprise that they have maintained their position as the best team in Australia. And now they'll get the opportunity to have a historic first-time crossover with the Aupiki champions this week.
Pretty cool. I think when Alice actually segued in there was that bit of a gap. I think that was for me to come in. So I am just going to say, it is so cool to have you here on our podcast, the first ever guest. And, you know, just someone of your class and your caliber, your advocacy for the game we've always admired, obviously representing at the highest level, but someone who's in the thick of it right now. Like, you have lived and breathed Super W for a number of years now. You've been in a team that was, I mean, from our view, looks like it was one of the more supported franchises. I could be so wrong, and you could give us some feedback on that later, to maybe one of the newer clubs in the Super W, playing alongside a couple of our Kiwi girls that have gone there as well. So
sure,
it's really cool to have you in here, and yeah, just so excited to get into the thick of the detail and understanding Super W and a little bit about the Waratahs.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Les. I bloody appreciate you. You've always been someone that I've admired from afar. And Alice, I'm kind of your biggest fan, and I told you that in person when we met in Dunedin a few years ago. But I mean, I think it's really important before we get deep into it to really understand what Super W is, how it began and where it is today. So this competition began in 2018. Just like, I guess our friends across the ditch, we didn't have a premier competition set up for women's rugby. Back then, it really was amateur in its infancy. But since 2018, right up until 2025, it's been running successfully, except we had 1 year where it was cut short because of COVID, and another year where we pretty much suppressed the whole competition into pretty much 2 weeks to crown our champion, because we were in a bubble in Coffs Harbour, which was crazy, because it was like we either put you all into a bubble to play this in like a really old school national format, which is like you play it over, you know, one game a day for like over 7 days kind of thing, and then crowning champions at the end. But I'm so grateful that the professionalism of the game has grown, and a little bit more time and thought has gone into it, that now we do have a sustainable competition. Is it perfect? No. Is it as long as it should be? No. But as we know, small, significant things will take time to build. And it's been really good to see all the Australian franchises at the time that it was birthed in 2018 have a team. In recent years, we've seen Fiji Underdraws, come to the competition as of 3 years ago. And then this year we saw the folding of the Melbourne Rebels. So the competition has had some significant in and outs, but you can definitely see the effort of Rugby Australia trying to sustain this competition. And I guess the best example of that is, although we lost Melbourne Rebels as a franchise, they introduced a team called Panina Pacifica, which meant that on your bye week, you would play them so that you would get five fixtures. Does it mean that you didn't lose a fixture, but 2, you just kind of kept the continuity, because, realistically, Super W is where you get all your preparation, all your game, all your opportunity to put your best foot forward, and then you skyrocket into an international season where your opposition play 20 plus games a year. So it plays a significant role in terms of what Australian women's rugby is trying to accomplish. But yes, all of that aside, the Waratahs have claimed their 6th title.
I mean, like, there's a couple of things I just want to jump on there, though. And I want to say, sitting over here, one of the things we hear often when we're like, oh, we want our competition longer, we want more la la, people often say, where is another franchise? And then they say Moana Pacifica. And what people need to understand is that Panina Pacifica is basically set up to fill that void. We've got a lot of the Samoan internationals, Tongan internationals who are playing and a part of that. So there actually is a number of New Zealand based players who you might recognise that have run out in that side. But to me, that also is like a thing that I want to give props to Rugby Australia about, because we're not always a good neighbour, I think, over here in New Zealand in terms of really understanding the rugby of our region. Yeah, we play Aussie every year, but we really don't offer that same type of love and support to our Pacific sisters. And given how much of our national game has been influenced by that style of rugby, we have so many beautiful women who have Pacifica heritage who have worn our jersey and made it great. It's like a real credit to Rugby Australia for having kind of offered that love back, right? And yeah, look, there's always some sort of controversy, unfortunately. I did see some headlines around the Fijiana Drua coming into the playoffs again, some condition stuff there. But like, having them as a regular part, you have to say, you've seen the proof in the pudding in terms of what that's looked like for them as an international side. And you'd hope that with this Panina Pacifica, we also see the likes of Samoa and other teams improving, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also makes you question, like, where do these girls go and play quality rugby if they're not playing for Panina? And, that's a huge gap. And the likes of the Samoa, like, they've qualified for Rugby World Cup. They're in Australia's pool when we go up to World Cup in August. And so I think in terms of trying to strengthen the product of the game, it's so important that these girls also get the exposure to their opposition and just get exposure to quality rugby, because it's too much of a responsibility to just rely on club and to rely on yourself to get through your conditioning and try and do your skills, because all of that's well and good. And don't get me wrong, it shouldn't be underestimated, but you need time in game. You need the exposure to the different dynamic, the different styles. So it is a huge credit to Rugby Australia, and I'm sure Pacific of Sport has a really huge role to play in that as well. But it was so refreshing to play Panina, because just even their style of play was so different, and they're so physical as well. And I think sometimes that's a part of the Australian game that is constantly being developed, is the physicality of it. Whereas these Panina girls came in and they were just big runners. They offered something different, and something that was really refreshing actually was just the joy that they played the game with. Because sometimes I think you can lose the joy in professional sport because you're just so driven by the process and the outcome. But I'm talking about a side that they would score a try and they may have been significantly down, but their team is singing hymns from the sideline. And again, it's not the usual sighting or the usual sounds that you would hear coming out of a rugby game, but how refreshing that we can invite that into our game in a year that is so significant for women's rugby.
If we were to look at the development of the competition there, Sarah, so you said 2018 it started off. Are you guys professional? And sorry about my naivety here, but is it semi-professional? You said that you at the Western Force do October to October, whatever that looks like. But yeah, what's the typical sort of setup for a Super W team?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's, I probably would still say that it is semi-professional, because most girls are still juggling a job. I will also say on that note that they're also making a choice to keep their jobs and have their incomes at the same time. And that's not a bad thing. It's a selfish thing. Like, we also have to acknowledge that we live in a society and an economy that we do that. You just got to do what you got to do to be able to stay afloat. For me personally, I have chosen not to work and just to rely solely on my rugby income. But that's because it's a personal choice that I've made in terms of trying to pursue my Rugby World Cup dreams. What Western Force has done differently is, I believe most franchises work within the period of Super W. So from a pre-season that may say starts in November, right up until when it finishes in, what month are we in? April. And maybe more so that contracting starts when their final squad is announced to when Super finishes. That probably sounds more realistic. Whereas the difference with Western Force is there's a real commitment to trying to make this franchise the first franchise to go fully professional for their women's, and that's why they provide remuneration all year round. But with that remuneration also comes responsibility. So I have 18 hours a week that I need to fulfill as part of my contract. And because the coaching staff here, our head coach, our physio and our S&C, they are employed full-time. That does mean that I can go in 4 days a week, and I will have structured sessions with coaching which is really important, right? That sometimes that's always been a conversation that you just don't necessarily have the resources. I'm pretty confident in saying that Western Force have everything it needs to be successful in terms of the resourcing and the support that's placed around it. And that's also because they operate independently from Rugby Australia. They do have, I guess, that capability to make those kind of choices for themselves. But that is just the nature of the beast, is that our contracting system goes through October to October, and we still get to go in as if we're going in for a full week of Super W training. But we're just being prepared. And the reason they're trying to do that as well is that they've also noticed the gap between, by the time you finish Super, you go to club and you bring you back to Super. Sometimes I guess your skill level does drop as well, because it's just the environment that you're most exposed to. But they're very much operating from the mindset that they want to keep their girls ready, and our team ready, if they get called up to high duties, that gap isn't as big and they can fit in a little bit more seamlessly. And then domestically for them, internally as an organisation, they get to keep their girls all year round, keep building them, and then it only allows them to be even more competitive when they go into next year, rather than just relying on a 3-month build up and then hoping to win a premiership at the end of it.
This is why we need to talk to each other more. And I say this all the time, particularly like to New Zealand rugby administrators. Talk to other people in women's rugby. Stop copying and pasting what's happened in men's, and pay attention to what other people are doing in our environment, because it's so much more applicable. There's some really interesting things you've just said there, Sera, because I wrote a column last week about my frustrations that after this weekend, a good number of the players we've just seen in our semi-professional league of Aupiki are going back to club. And that's madness if we're talking about development, because that's not good for them in terms of going back to like the grassroots of it all. But it's also not good for the grassroots players who now are have had lining up against a group of players that have had a professional preseason and are coming in. And like, what the heck is this? Like, there's so many things around that are not quite working well. So it's always interesting to hear people who are operating with a similar kind of set of resources and looking to apply it differently. And that whole thing around that yearly contract, I wonder about that, because we've seen so much movement, particularly in Aupiki sides here, between player groups. And I wonder if a lot of that is just like not having that continuity of contract. We are essentially recontracting people every time we're coming into a conversation. It's madness. But the part that's also interesting to me is that the moves that Rugby Australia has done more recently, because we all know the English PWR is the benchmark in terms of domestic competitions. And I think more so than what had impacted us here in the New Zealand game, the Australians had been using it. A number of your high-profile players, a number particularly that featured heavily in the last World Cup, Laurie Kramer being one, who had gone and had a lot of, Emily Chancellor too, had a lot of time over and featuring in that. But now I understand there has been a bit of a contract shift, in that there is kind of like, in terms of unlocking your full earning potential in the yellow jersey, there is a requirement, right, to be playing and taking part in Super. That's new, isn't it?
I don't think it's necessarily been new. There's just been a cap on how many players can play abroad and not participate in our domestic competition. So we had in recent years, like we had the likes of, incredible Laurie Kramer, Emily Chancellor, Caitlin Leaney, Arabella McKenzie applying their craft overseas. Even Michaela Leonard as well, she was at the time. But they're quite, back then, I can't say confidently if it's changed, if they've lifted that cap. But there was only a certain number of players that they could contract who did not participate in the domestic season, which is why you would see the likes of, I guess, Caitlin Leaney probably would be a good example of that. Emily Chancellor, they probably they came back to play their domestic seasons here, and it's not because that the Wallaroos wouldn't necessarily look at them. I guess it was just to shore up their opportunities as well. Like, I've done that, I've done my time, I'm going to come back, I'm going to do it the right way. Well, not necessarily the right way, but I don't want to leave any room for them to think otherwise in terms of like my level of commitment to this game and to the gold jersey. So I believe that it's a really important thing for girls to go and taste the game abroad, because it's so different. And, any side, and I was playing at the Waratahs when, say, like, so, and Chance and Bella and Caitlin came back, like, they just elevated our team because of that external experience that they had that was so different. Just the way that they thought about the game, the way that they applied their craft. Like, I think there's so much that we can learn by being exposed to different environments. And I think like so for myself, like when I went over to Mutts too, like I just learned so I was a little bit like wide-eyed, bushy-tailed at like how different that the New Zealand system did things, but it actually made me a better player because I thought, oh, like that's what leadership looks like. So that's how you communicate on the field, or that's how you should construct a play. Is not how can you best execute it, but what confuses the most confusion in the defense when you run it. Just like small things like that, I think really elevate the game. So I know I digress a little bit, but to answer your question, it is encouraged that you get to play the game wherever you want to. However, there is an urgency for you to come back and try and play your domestic season here because stronger players in this domestic season also means that we get a stronger national team as well.
It makes sense, right? You want to grow the game for everyone. I think the thing that's interesting for me, though, if we're talking about people who have deployed resources differently this year, reality is the Tahs are coming here for this crossover, but they've already been here as part of preseason because they came over and they played my beautiful hometown. They played the Hurricanes Poa, and my team actually won a game. It was great, guys. Remember when we were hopeful for our season?
It was a strong performance. I watched the game back on Huddle.
But then the game they did play was a preview of this crossover we're going to have, and that was 35 all. And so I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind because everyone always, when we talk about crossovers, there is a New Zealand arrogance that comes into that conversation that says, oh, well, we're going to beat everybody. Oh, get over yourselves. Like I saw how much the Waratahs improved from that game against the Poa to that game against the Blues. And the thing to keep in mind there too is when they played the Blues, Arabella McKenzie was just on the sideline. And she's, a very important player in terms of unlocking their attack and their defence and everything else, really. So, like, they went toe-to-toe with the Blues. Are you expecting them to turn up in the same way?
I really am. I think, just on that note, when you're always previewing New Zealand opposition or you're talking about how would fare against them, I think a lot of Australian teams probably would have a little bit of the heebie-jeebies because they've just not played New Zealand sides. And it's very fair to say it's a different style of play. It's physical. It's probably a little bit faster as well than what we offer here on Aussie shores. But for the Waratahs, I think they would be going into this extremely confident. I think if you look at their season just here within Super W, it didn't start the way that they probably wanted to, being beaten by Draw in that opening round and just so many uncharacteristic errors. But what I can appreciate about their season is the slow build throughout. And then it came to the point in the end, and then they played their best footy at the end when it really, really mattered. And if you watch that game against the Reds on the weekend, like they didn't just play, like they competed. They competed and then they ran away with the game towards that last quarter of it. So going into this game against the Blues, I think there's no reason to fear it. They did have the likes of Arabella out the last time that these two sides faced off with each other, but I think the likes of Arabella McKenzie, G. Fredericks, they are playing some of their best footy. And the way that I see it is because there's calmness in the big moments. And then it almost looks even more dangerous when they're having fun and they're so calm and everything's sticking. And I know that that's going to be a huge weapon for them going into this weekend.
Looking at the Blues, you mentioned that you did, off camera, that you did see the Aupiki final. Looking at the Blues, where do you think that the Tahs could get this? How are they going to win this?
Play the territory game. Very early in the piece, Blues were conceding a lot of penalties, which gave Mutts to the opportunity to play with the ball in hand to kick. And I think that's exactly how the Waratahs play. They are a team that they don't play their hand too much in their half. They're really good at getting out of it. Arabella McKenzie's boot will be the reason to do that. However, when they get down there, like they're not afraid to do the grind. And I think that's exactly if the Blues want to, as long as the Blues can kind of minimize their penalties, keep the ball in hand, that's how they're going to come away with it, because that's exactly how the Waratahs capitalize. They'll capitalize on your errors, and it's really hard to get back into it once they gain that momentum and have that continuity in their play.
Oh my gosh, I'm already like getting excited about it, but this has to be the sign of things to come, right? I have to take heart that this is going to be... Yeah, I have to take heart because, like, if I rewind in our time machine over here, we had the exhibition match of 2021 and we were all like, yeah, okay, that was kind of there were lots of things to do with that game, but like we were like, surely this now means this is coming. And we have to think the fact that our two governing bodies have been able to be friends for long enough to coordinate the timing of our seasons to allow this crossover to happen. This has to be the sign of a crossover coming next season, right?
I would hope so. I don't know if next season is going to be the timing for it. And the reason I say that is I would just much like selfishly, I would much rather see Rugby Australia construct our season so we can actually have a home and away and make sure that we have a sustainable domestic competition structure before we merge with our friends and sometimes our foes across the ditch. But it does make sense that we do emerge our competitions because there is so much that we can learn. There's so much that we can be gained from playing each other consistently. And, like it really is the fixture, when you look at the Laurie O'Reilly series, like it is the fixture that you circle in your calendar because you know that that's the one that you want to go after. And when you get to those games, regardless of how the result fares out, there's always a note about the physicality. There's always a note about how fast the game was and who was on the back foot and who capitalized more. And I just think, man, if you just expose each other to that level of competition consistently, as wonderful and as great as the Black Ferns are, how much more that they can continually grow their game, and conversely, how much more the Wallaroos can grow by constantly being exposed to that. And I think what's really special about this, and I was thinking about it last night, is that this is historic for our game, for us to have a crossover of our champions. It's also the closest thing that we're going to get to a Laurie O'Reilly kind of fixture test match because it's the best of Australia going against the best of New Zealand. Like all the Australian teams have played, and this is who sits at the top of it right now. And all of New Zealand have played, and this who sits at the top of it right now. And isn't that almost the similar kind of thinking when you think about Wallaroos and Black Ferns? It's the best of your two countries that you gather and you let them go to war. And I just think like it's so exciting. And someone that's been playing this game now for a little while and been playing Super W, and you're always talking about the expansion of the competition. Like this is really heartening for me as a player that like this is a genuine step forward to trying to see these two amazing competitions merge and try and forge a new path forward because it's been great. Don't get me wrong, like how we've been playing so far and the competition structure, but like, I don't know, I just don't feel like what has got us here will get us to where we need to go next. And I think emerging with Aupiki really does seem like the next best step, but shoring up a home and away would be my first preference.
If I'm thinking about things we do copy from men's rugby, I think if you look at the impacts that their super competition has had on then the World Cup success of the teams that have got to feature. If you look back, I'm going to do a men's rugby lesson for us. I don't pay much attention to them, but every now and then I do when they do useful things. But when the Japanese had that like dream match against South Africa, what had happened just before that World Cup? Japan was playing in Super Rugby. When the Samoans ended up going and having a great World Cup at the last one, and everyone was rooting for them to go further than they had since, 1991 or 93 or whatever it was because they had a Moana Pacifica team in the Super Rugby competition. So I think we have to be more serious about not just our top level, but our feeders and how important these domestic pieces are to our success. Because I'm looking at Australia's route from here, right? You lot have got the toughest card you could have been dealt when it comes to World Cup this year. You're in the pool of death is a cliche, but you're in a bloody tough pool. If you're looking at it, there were three of the quarterfinalists.
That's what you're trying to say.
Well, not just that. You've got 3 quarterfinalists from the last World Cup, and only 2 of them are going to make it out.
Yeah.
So that's so tough in terms of where you're going. I'm watching you. You've got 7 test matches, though, lined up ahead of the World Cup. We've only got 4. I'm pissed off about that. Don't talk to me about it. You've got 7. This is all exciting. Like, you have to think that this is the piece, though, right? Because, again, if we're looking further forward, love doing that. We've got the World Cup next. You lot are hosting it. So, again, this domestic piece becomes a really important thing to be building up your team, but also building up your audience, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love that you talked about audience. Oh, this is the kind of conversations that just get my juices flowing, But no, it's so true. Like, I think it's really short-sighted for us to think that, worrying about this World Cup, we can't think about 2029 because it's so true. By the time that September finishes, which is when World Cup finishes, all eyes are talking, and all nations globally, World Rugby is talking about Australia and us hosting. And I think that you really highlight an important piece that the boosting and the shoring up of our domestic competition not only is good for pathways, but it encourages people about the word of the Wallaroos and the world of women's rugby. And, what a pity if we get to 2029 and we haven't done our due diligence and we have empty stadiums when we're hosting an iconic global event. Like, these are the best players around the whole world coming to our shores. And I think that the marketing of that needs to start now. And I hope that in years to come, by the time that 29 happens, we're not talking about what the Matildas did here, and that's the example that we're using. We're talking about the example of the Wallaroos and how they harnessed a home nation, and this home nation got behind them and filled the stadiums, and it was the best World Cup that this nation has ever seen. Because also remembering, before 29 comes, we're hosting the 27 Men's World Cup. And I think there's this really important piece that we can do there. If we can start talking about World Cup, not just the men's, but also start talking about the women's, we get to the men's, and it's not like the whole nation falls off because the men's World Cup has finished and we don't really care what happens. It should all be part of this sensational marketing scheme that 27 happens, and it's going to be huge regardless, right? It's going to be huge. But 27 really skyrockets this Australian as this Australian audience into what 2029 can be. Like, I think it's also such a blessing that we get the 2027 World Cup, because it's the one time also that we get the whole nation's attention, the whole world's attention, and also point them towards 29, which is only 2 years after. Like, it is such a rarity for a country to host 2 World Cups of the same code within 2 years of each other. It is like, it doesn't happen. And I think it's a huge credit to what Rugby Australia did to be in such a way that we're able to secure both those home World Cups. But 27 needs to be a key piece in marketing and pulling in the crowds and raising the awareness and the consciousness of the Australian and the global public to 29 once we host our home World Cup.
Man, just listening to you talk I can hear your excitement, I can hear your passion, your optimism, and it makes me just want to get on board somehow. Like, how do we help this, You're so right. All those points are so valid. And I think if there's any learning that you guys can take from us is capitalising off momentum, because I don't think New Zealand Rugby and New Zealand did that very well following the 2022 World Cup that just broke records. So, yeah, I love the way you're thinking there. I hope you're in some kind of group. If you're not playing in it, I hope you're in some kind of group that's making their 2029 World Cup happen. But hey, I am mindful that we are 3 very passionate women that could talk systems and how we're going to save the women's rugby world. But we need to pipe up and hype up this final as well. And so I want to ask a couple of things, Sera, because you are our expert. Over here, the Blues are seen as clear favourites in terms of Aupiki. They are the team that is stacked with Black Ferns, past, current, and former, or present, and even some young up-and-coming stars that will no doubt make a name for themselves in a black jersey this year. Is that how the Waratahs are viewed? Are they sort of seen as the Australian version, like stacked? I'm not too sure. Can you give us some insight into that? And then I want to ask too, which I might be jumping prematurely here, but who do you reckon's going to win?
Okay, I'll answer your first question. The Waratahs definitely are seen as the benchmark within Australian women's rugby. It is because that I don't want to talk about them being sacked. It's because they have been so successful. And it doesn't necessarily matter who's been on their roster, because as we know, there's always in and outs every season. But for the most part, they have kept their spine. And I think that's a real credit to the franchise, that they have kept their spine and they've maintained an environment that girls want to keep showing up and playing for every season. And I think that's the most important part to acknowledge. Second part, oh yeah, that team's got heaps of Wallaroos. They've got heaps of Wallaroos. But again, those girls have the choice and the liberty to choose where they want to go play, but they choose the Waratahs, and that speaks volumes for itself. Coming into this week, I actually think it's going to be close with the Blues. I really do. While you look at the caliber of players in Blues, and it's easy to be spooked out by it, I really want to back the Waratahs on this one, because I think them winning this will be so huge for our game and what it also means for us in setting us up for an international season. To see them win would be a win, honestly, for Aussie rugby, and that's what I'm rooting for. 2 different styles of play. I think that we'll go head to head this week, but I think if they just play their hand the way that they haven't overplayed it too early, they've pulled the trigger at the right moments, and they're not going to be spooked. They're not going to be spooked heading into this week. I think it's going to make a really good showing of rugby, and it'll be close, but I think really what it will come down to is who dominates that collision zone. because everything that the Waratahs do is based off the dominant collisions. They have really big forwards, really strong forwards, particularly in the likes of Felicia Pahiva, who's been donning the number 3 jersey. She went from being a finisher for them to being a starter for them. And when you look at the way she plays, it's exciting. Like she's strong on both sides of the ball. So I think like looking at her and the way that forwards pack is set up, everything that they do is based on how they dominate that collision. They don't dominate the collision, the Blues will get a roll on. They do. They will get to play their style of footy. And again, they'll control that territory game really well, which I think they probably did best throughout this whole competition. And yeah, I'm excited for what it could be. Are you guys ready for the Blues?
You know what?
I know it's not polar.
Yeah, you know what? I'm in a weird way. I probably will be cheering for the Tars because I always love an underdog because I was born and raised in Wellington. I was born and raised in Wellington, so I'm always rooting for the upset, right? Like, that's just who I am as a person. But I agree with you. I look over at Aussie rugby and I'm just like, I can see all the pieces there. They just kind of need to click together. And we know how good they could be because we have seen it in the shorter format. We've seen, New Zealand and Australia duking it out for years now and being head and shoulders above. And I just know it's just a matter of time before things click in the 15s to do the same, because you can't have a 7 sides like that and not also be able to have a 15 side. Plus, we've seen what you can do in the 13 player game too. So it's like, for me, it's just a case of when Australian rugby comes of age, and when it does, that's going to be brilliant for us that we have someone so close and that we have someone who we have got this, locked in schedule that we play most consistency, to have that as a real challenge. Like, I want that. And so, yeah, Les, you're calling it blasphemy, but actually I'm playing long game here in terms of if the Tars can get up, what this, not just like for Australian rugby this year, but for women's rugby in the Southern Hemisphere, it will mean so much more, I think, than if the Blues turn out and roll it.
100%. I get that point as well. I mean, people will really start to listen and look, right, if they're going, oh my gosh, that was one heck of an entertaining final and we've got to keep that going. So I get that. I'm probably like the flip side of Sarah. I think, I'm rooting for the Blues this weekend. I also agree that the physical battle is going to be crucial this weekend, and we know that is the bread and butter of what the Blues do. But I think where the Blues have struggled is to put a balanced, here's my word for the Blues, they actually haven't put through a balanced performance in terms of attack and D. They've either dominated on attack or dominated on D and just played the whole game on D majority of the time. So if they're going to go out and play this game like they did on the weekend, which was majority defence, and then capitalise off some set-piece moves, then, yeah, it might be a real hard day in the office for them. But I hope that they can actually show some of their attacking prowess balanced with their good defence. So I'm pumped. I wish we were there. I'm 4 hours away and I've got a game that night that I coach, so I'm not going to be there, but I'll watch it on TV. But I'm pumped.
It's going to be a goodie. It's going to be a good one.
Oh, mate. I'm just so stoked, Sarah. You've been phenomenal. Thank you for being our on-call Aussie. I hope you know that is now your job on the Full Credit Pod. You are the Australian Whisperer.
You just let me know when you want me. I've got so much time for you, though.
I think too, though, echo what Alice has said is so great, and I could listen to you all day, Sarah. I 100% could. I can just hear that passion in your voice, which I always love. But I do want to just say as well, all the best for this year. We know you've got a big journey ahead. You've got the World Cup coming in England. What a place to go and play. So all the best for your training, your selections, all those sorts of things. Enjoy the journey, and we hope to see you playing at that World Cup later on this year.
Oh, thank you. I received that, Liz. Thank you both for making time for me on your potty. And as I said to Alice in the DMs, I was like, I just love that this is just a participation podcast where you just try and, just talk all the good things. Like, you really challenge the conversation. You really challenge the stats. You really challenge the way that people are playing and the way that teams are playing. And I think that's really refreshing, because sometimes when people talk about our game, they like to err on the side of caution to not offend. But you guys are standing in the truth of like what women's rugby is really fighting for and to be known for. So thank you for all your mahi in this space as well.
Oh my gosh. Group hug, everyone. Oh, I love it.